Yes, and I would like you to be part of this conversation. The hashtag is Good Morning Kenya on Twitter. Start tweeting at KBC Television, at Jane Ombui, and at Ram Aguko. What are the questions that you have? What opinions do you have? Now, no matter what, you know, so far we have come, we've had quite a journey. And there is someone who said, and I will, a wise man, say that no matter how far you've come, never forget where you've come from.
Right.
Now, looking back at how, you know, as a country, the journey we have taken, can you be certain and can you be proud as a leader that we have taken steps as a country?
Yes, Ram, first of all, gaining self-rule is very important. And only a few days ago, we celebrated our 56th Madaraka Day. So that in itself is a major achievement for our country. But in reality, we also have to acknowledge that as much as there have been some positive developments, we also have very many challenges, and some continue to emerge, which are completely different, and they'll require innovation and different solutions. Yes.
So
and in Kenya, for instance, we have been able to even transit from one constitutional dispensation to another. We now have a new constitution in place. So some of these are critical milestones in our country.
And you've talked about the constitution, of which the issue of referendum comes into place, where we need to review the constitution. But we will touch on that.
Right.
Yeah. And there's some who say that you lack a political strategy. And I don't know your comments. And that's why they say that Team Keleweke and Tangatanga are dominating even in your region. Would you say, how would you respond to these allegations?
You know, first of all, we must distinguish between lobby groups and a political party. When you're talking about the various teams that you are alluding to, are they registered?
They want to be...
Are they recognized as registered entities, or are they just lobby groups? Because we must be careful that as politicians, I can move and say I'm the party leader of ANC because it is a legal entity, it is recognized, it is registered. But when you have loose arrangements, you don't respond to loose arrangements. I think as Kenyans, we need to interrogate issues more deeply. Because what are you rushing into? This is a fundamental question that I always want to encourage Kenyans, and particularly the voters. Because this idea of falling into a trap, of joining a bandwagon that you do not even understand what it stands for.
You feel that they don't understand themselves?
I mean, what is their philosophy? You tell me, what is their philosophy? What is their ideological position?
Based on one point, one team says that they are supporting the president, the other says that they support the
Is that an ideology? I think politics must be based on focusing on issues that are useful. What is their policy, or what do they stand for in terms of the economy of this country? What do they stand for in terms of dealing with unemployment in this country? What do they stand for when we talk about the high levels of taxation and the high cost of living in this country? I think these are the questions that should be put on the table. Yes. And so let us not fall into the trap of trying to push Kenyans into two parallel camps. Yeah. This is one thing that I would like to really get Kenyans to avoid. But in any case, let's ask yourself, even if they are loose arrangements, aren't they loose arrangements of the same political party?
You dismiss these teams, Kelly.
Yeah, you remember in the early days, Ram, there used to be Kanu A, Kanu B, and Kanu Private. So which was what? So here we have Jubilee. Okay.
Yeah,
we have
Jubilee,
Kieleweke, we have Jubilee, Tangatanga. But if we are having a problem with the economic crisis, which is the party in power?
But now, just as Jubilee is divided, NASA is also divided.
But we are not in power. We are not the ones in ruling. We are opposition. I am in. We formed NASA to be the counter to the government. We wanted to get the mandate of the people of Kenya to be able to govern. But that mandate is not with us, in spite of the challenges that we may have gone through during the election process. The reality now that the issue of the position of authority is vested in the Jubilee government.
You said that now you had supported the leaders that I had just mentioned earlier on. Do you think that now they owe you a political debt?
I always say they don't owe me, but I want people to realize that I am a selfless leader. I have shown before, through that period, that I can support other candidates from other parts of Kenya. I think that is significant.
And you said, and I quote, I did it deliberately because I did not want Raila or anyone else to blame me for not supporting them.
Precisely. I was dealing with certain issues. You support because there's a good cause. When we set up NASA, that was it. But I was also responding to unjustified allegations in 2013 when I contested for the first time. At that time, propagandists went around saying that my standing has spoiled for my colleague in NASA. At that time, he was in court.
Would you say that it was true that
It
you
was
might
not
have
true.
influenced the numbers?
It
If you stood with him by then?
It was not true. It was not true. I think, but I wanted to address that issue, but so that psychologically, the Kenyan people can realize that to contest is a constitutional right, provided you meet the necessary requirements. All right? What would be the process of having a democratic exercise if people are going to be labeling you in one way or the other? I think we should encourage Kenyans to start looking at the policy content that is emanating from a political party or from individuals who are competing for various positions.
And you have the right policy content when it comes to vying. And there is a section of politicians from Western Kenya who have faulted you over a move to form Team Komboa Kenya. Right, and there is Senator Cleophas Malala had said this, that we are disappointed with the plans by the Mudavadi camp to form Team Komboa Kenya. It is now clear that Honorable Mudavadi is not with us.
With who? With who? First
Senator.
of all, can anybody quote me anywhere as having said I have established Team Komboa? You see, rumors. Kenyans and rumors. It's the most tragic thing that you can come across.
These are all rumors that are just created for nothing.
Where is it? I'm the party leader of ANC.
But why rumors?
I don't know. Because Kenyans have a weakness. You know, Kenyans have an affinity for rumor mongering. Because frankly speaking, where is this entity?
Team Komboa Kenya.
Where is it? You see, if people out there want to say they're trying to create lobby groups and what have you, that is their business. My focus is to develop ANC. So, and on the other side, when you say he's not with us, so where is he? The last time I checked, Senator Malala is a member of ANC. So when he says he's not with us, what does he mean? If that is what he said.
Okay. And what about there's a former CS, Rachid Echesa, who seemingly now has joined ANC, or has joined you?
No, he has not joined ANC. He expressed support for my candidacy. And he said validly that ANC should encourage membership from people beyond those who are already members of ANC. So he was putting forward a statement that grow the party ANC, get other people, even those who are not today subscribers or registered members of ANC, seek out and get more members. So this is the angle that Chesa came on from. And secondly, he felt that his support, his statement, would help in consolidating my bid for the presidency. Yeah.
And he was encouraging you to be brave and back on galvanizing the entire region, saying that you are the most powerful leader in Western. But now there is a quote that I would like to say here. Ukitaka ng'ombe ya siasa kwa bei rahisi enda Western. That's what you said.
Yes.
What are your thoughts concerning the Western Bloc and its leadership? And what did you mean by this? That
what I meant here is that we need to encourage the people of Western Kenya to be proud of themselves and to feel confident like other Kenyans who have been in the political space in this country. All right? And I keep on taking them back that when you stereotype a region, you know, the way at one time there was a political leader who said that Western Kenya is basically a marketplace for cooks and watchmen.
And that is the region where you come from.
Right. He said that. Another one said that Western Province is like a pot of busa, and all you need to do is to put your straw in there, and you'll get your share of it. All right? So what I was trying to put out here is that, come on, people of Western Kenya, it is 56 years. 56 years.
And we still talk in trouble lines.
We still have no confidence in ourselves that you cannot lead, that you cannot be elected. So I want them to move out of that position. All right? And then the second thing that comes out of here, because there's a flip side, I want them to also be proud that they, as a community, the community of Western Kenya, has also demonstrated the highest level of patriotism. Because they have shown that they can vote for any other Kenyan, provided they're convinced he deserves the vote. And they voted for Moi.
They were convinced when you supported Moi.
They voted for Moi. They have voted for Kibaki. They have voted for Raila. And some of them have even voted for Uhuru. All right? But can you say this? Can you say the same for many other communities in this country? Have they shown the same level of patriotism?
Could it be because of is it all about patriotism, love for the country or the leader?
It's not. It should be love. We should learn to vote beyond ethnic cocoons. That's one particular thing. All right, we should learn to do that. But at the same time, I want our people to be encouraged and to believe in themselves. I want self-confidence to be instilled in them.
You know, someone may not really interpret that based on ukisema ngombe ya siasa ya kwa bei rahisi inapatikana Western. Someone, it might be misinterpreted to say that you're discrediting, the leaders.
I am from that community, right? It's a time of self-reflection. I am from that community, and I have been hurt when they have been called a marketplace for cooks and watchmen. I have been hurt when they've been told that they are nothing but a pot of local brew and anybody can suck from it. Clearly, these things, we have to address them. We can't run away from them. And that is why, being a member of that community, I used harsh words, knowing very well I'm a member of that community, but with the full intent that it jolts us into holding ourselves in high esteem. We should not put ourselves in a situation where we always believe we are going to be second fiddle, play second fiddle.
You believe it's possible to put this region to become one block, to vote for, in one mind, with one mindset for one leader.
Even if it was not voting for me, but it could be another person from the same area. But what I'm saying is that it should be a situation where they believe in themselves.
You said even if it's not voting for you. We have other people who are still vying for the same seat that you're vying for. Governor Wycliffe Oparanya said that he's vying for presidency come 2022. Honorable the Ford Party Leader also, that is Moses Utangula, saying that he's also vying. What does it mean for you?
You know that should not worry anybody. And in fact, maybe there's over too much scrutiny in Western Kenya. Let's just look at the history of this country. There was a time Kibaki stood. And when Kibaki stood, we had Mukaru Nganga. Right? We had Wangari Maathai. I think there was a time we even had Matiba and all that. Then, the last time Uhuru contested in, when he stood in for his first time, 2013, there was Peter Kenneth on the ballot. There was Paul Mwite, and there was Martha Karua. Okay? And people made their decisions. So, and even if you go beyond that, there was a time Raila stood and Orengo stood.
At the same time?
Yes.
And there's a time Raila stood and you stood?
Yes. So go back into history. So the point I'm trying to say is that it is not the people who are declaring their intention. That is not the problem. The problem is the issue of the voter believing in themselves. And once they believe in themselves, believing that they can beat, through a democratic process, beat somebody else. Let them not say that we are here just to be wooed. That is what I want us to eliminate. We can also woo other Kenyans to support our cause.
Boni Alwale said that when you win, even if you run, and Wetangula also runs for the same seat, that you will not win. And he says that you will, even that you are to get a running mate like Jeremiah Kioni and think you will make it, then it's a dream.
I think somebody like Kalwale maybe can be forgiven. Frankly speaking, he's a man who has found a new calling, and let us allow him to
express himself.
To express himself. That's the only thing I can say. I think our focus as a nation is to go forward, and we should not dwell on that.
Wow, that's quite interesting that he has found his new calling.
Yes.
And as a country, we are in a situation where we are now finding new things that are coming up. The new currency that the new generation notes, and there are claims that is contrary to Article 231(4) of the Constitution, to the extent that they bear an image and portrait of an individual. Here we are talking about the founding president. There is a comment that Rarieda Member of Parliament Otiende had said that he was disappointed, and he asked, are we short of images that depict Kenya? You said, in your own words, that recalling the 1,000 shilling note will not end corruption. Why so?
Well, you've asked a couple of questions. First of all, the issue about the design of the new denomination.
Yes.
That is an issue that is before the courts, and it will be canvassed by the lawyers. All right? But if you are to ask me, it's unlikely that they will win that case.
It's unlikely.
It's unlikely.
It will pull. It will pull through regardless of the time they take it court.
When you look at KICC, all right, it's a national monument. That's what they want to capture. But isn't that statue? Has that statue been there?
It has been there for a long time.
It has. So it has been part of the complex of Kenyatta International Conference Center, isn't it?
Some are arguing that the angle was put in a way just to.
So if you're talking of a statue, you must distinguish between what is a portrait
and a statue.
And a statue.
These and the Constitution does not distinguish.
And I think those are the issues that the lawyers are going to haggle over. And secondly, if you look at it in terms of the images that people say, can you really pinpoint and say who is that image? Whether it is the children or whatever. Can you really say that this is somebody's image and name the person? When you get
it's
time,
on arrival.
Yeah, when you get time, please reflect on that. Take the currency and look at it carefully, and say, can you really say that this is Mudavadi's image?
What about that of, because that is the founding father?
It is a statue. That's not a portrait. Now, let's look at the flip side of it. I'm not a defender of all these things, but I'm just trying to get people to look at the other side of the debate. Let's look at it and say, so assuming you go to court and you win, and they say withdraw that. So which currency comes back to circulation?
Interesting point there. We cannot go back to the former one?
No, you will, because there's no other one. So if you have a challenge with this one and you withdraw it, or the court says that it should be withdrawn, then the currency that is in circulation is the one that will be put in place.
But at the same time, withdrawing it will come with expenses, because money has already been put in place,
Precisely. Now, that is another issue that Kenyans are forgetting, that the printing of currency is also very big business. It runs into billions of dollars. And there are very few security printers globally who print currency. Now, you cannot run away from the fact that we have delayed in implementing our new constitution, because these new currencies should have been in circulation from 2015. We promulgated our constitution in 2010. These new currencies should have been in place in 2015. But there were court cases because a lot of litigation was in place of competing forces around the issue of the printing of currencies. These cases have just been finished. So are we, by any chance, seeing an extension of the competition of currency printers through proxy? Because if you terminate this, then there's again a process of procuring the printers and how they move on. And this could drag again. So we really have to be cautious here. But let me also say this. We have migrated from other currencies before. People tend to forget that in the early days we used to have the East African currency. When we got independence, Jomo Kenyatta's government then introduced a new currency, which bore his portrait.
We had one with the Queen
yes,
that was there before.
So those ones were phased out.
They were phased out.
Right? Then, when Moi took over, during the tenure of his, we then saw the Nyayo currency with the bust of President Moi. Then, when that era ended and Kibaki came into power, Kibaki reintroduced the currency that bears Kenyatta's portrait. And then now the new constitution came into place, which now minimizes what you would call portraits on or outlaws portraits on the currency. So we have seen a history of transiting from one currency to the other. But let us not lose sight of the fact that they were, apart from fulfilling a constitutional requirement, there's also the very fundamental issue about dealing with counterfeit and illicit transactions and currencies.
And that could be, would that be something that can be dealt with even as you talk about bringing in the new currency? Is it possible to deal with counterfeit at the same time fight corruption?
It's counterfeiting, simply put in layman's language, is basically forging, forgery of the currency, So what we need to figure out is that, has central bank in the new currency, the ones they've printed, have they put sufficient security features in those currencies to minimize?
They say they have.
To minimize the issue of counterfeiting. That is what is going to be key going forward. But in the meantime, when the central bank governor used the word counterfeiting, he was also admitting that the 1,000 shilling denomination has been prone to easy counterfeiting, and therefore we can conclude positively from his remarks that there is some fake currency in circulation in our economy and in the region. And it bears the face of the Kenyan 1,000 shilling denomination in particular.
Is it possible to fight corruption using this way?
It minimizes, okay? Fighting corruption is not just about changing the currency alone. All right?
You said it will not end corruption in any way.
No. It does not. It is one of the tools you can use to fight corruption or to fight against some corrupt activities. But it is not an end in the fight against corruption in itself. There are still so many other things to go through. Evidence must be adduced. People must be taken to court where they have their day there. And based on the evidence that you put on the table, you can then prosecute. So corruption is broader. A new currency is just one segment of trying to deal with the aspect of corruption. But there are so many other things. There's asset recovery that comes after you have established the facts.
You are Minister of Finance before.
Yes.
Don't you think that at some point, because there are some people who claim, some analysts, people talk, and they say that you should have been consulted when it comes to the coming up of new currency. Do you feel that at some point you have a word in terms of even approving such kind of things? Consultation, public participation has been there. Are you satisfied with this new currency?
I think as an individual, I cannot say that I have a right to claim that I must be consulted. I think the Constitution calls for public participation, all right? Where it is broad-based. It is not about me as an individual. But listening to the governor, unless there's evidence to the contrary, he said that these currencies were gazetted. And there was a period that they were asking for those who have any objections to go and make contrary positions. In his statement, if you follow carefully, those are some of the things he said.
Yes.
So if somebody had a contrary view when these designs were put forward as images for commentary and so forth, and they did not comment at that time, now you want to comment after the fact, then you have to be very careful. Did they follow? Was it gazetted? Did they have an opportunity to respond to those gazette notices? So these are issues. By the way, I'm not here to speak for Njoroge. Okay, I'm not speaking for him. but there are some issues that will have to be canvassed in court, and then these issues will come to an end.
You wanted
but also remember, apart from the possibility of currency printers competing and wanting to prolong this battle, you can also not rule out the fact that there are those who have been caught up with some of this illicit cash, and
under their beds,
and they're trying to delay as much as possible the guillotine date, because the guillotine date is 1st of October. So some of them may be in a state of panic that how will they dispose or clean up their cash.
There's some leaders want it
to
be brought forward.
Oh no, that is what you call reverse psychology. The ones who are saying bring it in 7 days. That is reverse psychology. He knows,
with the minds of Kenyans.
He knows very well that the gazettement has already been done for the 1st of October. So when you say it should have been done in 7 days, you see, there has to be an orderly transition also in terms of financial adjustment. So this is a reverse psychology to try and put up a brave face. But in reality, people have been caught in a dilemma.
And you wanted the president to fire cabinet secretaries mentioned in graft claims. At some point, there was, I remember during the time that the president was giving the State of the Nation address, he said that he will not fire anyone, because calling it something that was not right. What are your thoughts concerning this? Do you still vouch for, firing of anyone who has been named in a corruption case?
I think based on how our new constitution has come into play, I think the levels that are required on matters of integrity, if you implement this constitution fully, are much higher. The standards are much higher than they were under the old constitutional regime. So it is important that people holding public office now look at the whole issue differently than in the past. We need to have good conduct for those who are occupying public offices. And if indeed, for instance, and I've been saying this severally, if you have become a regular visitor at Kinoti's DCI headquarters, and obviously Kinoti is not brewing coffee for you. He's asking very fundamental
to have breakfast there.
Yeah, he's asking very fundamental questions. So if there are so many issues that are so serious, then why don't you do the president a favor and Kenyans a favor and resign? Because if you don't resign, the president has two options: either to sack you, or to simply call you and tell you I've lost confidence in you. He's the president of this country. In addition to that, he's the commander-in-chief of the defense forces. And he gave you the job. So if he called you and looked straight into your eye and said, my friend, you have not performed your duties as they should have been performed, and there are so many queries around your docket.
But obviously no one will resign. This is Kenya.
Well,
it has happened outside there.
We need to set standards differently, and people have resigned before. During the Kibaki government, don't you remember people resigned?
Right now?
Yeah.
Can anyone resign at this moment?
They should. I mean, when they were resigning under the Kibaki government, wasn't it under this new constitution?
What is the reason why we are having so much?
Or have you forgotten that there were some ministers who had to resign or to step aside when there were queries?
Do you think we have so much at our disposal? Because now we have corruption scandals coming in left, right, and center. Do we have so much at our disposal? Do our leaders now have a lot that is now making it really easy for them to engage in corruption?
Well, all I can say is that institutions must be allowed to function. And we must resource these institutions appropriately, both in terms of technology, in terms of financial resource, and in terms of human resource. Particularly institutions that have a major leverage on matters relating to accountability. And here you can start from the Office of the Auditor General, because he has to scrutinize the accounts of this country. We then have to look at the prosecutorial agency, the DPP's office. We have to look at the EACC. We have to look at the DCI, and even within the police, and then the judiciary itself. To what extent are they equipped to cope with the challenges that we are seeing at this point in time? Now, these are fundamental issues which require even Parliament, as they work on the budget, to address. Because we've had cases and we've had complaints from some of these institutions that they are limited in their ability to deliver because they are not being resourced adequately. So Parliament has got a challenge.
You mentioned the Auditor General there, the DCI, the DPP. At some point, even the judicial system has been accused of being corrupt in itself. So can the corrupt judge the corrupt?
That is a philosophical question. But let me give you an example of what I mean when I say resourced. and adequately. And this is very good for the viewers. In the last budget, for instance, and we have seen that even there's a reduction in the budget that looking at that is likely to be presented.
Yeah.
But in the last budget, for instance, the DPP's office was allocated about 3.4 billion shillings. The office of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission was allocated almost the same amount. The judiciary was given about 14 million. Now Parliament allocated to itself 46 billion. Now, you must remember that Parliament sits twice in a week. Tuesday, Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, and Thursday afternoon. Basically, 2 days in a week. Parliament has maybe about 1,000 plus staff. The judiciary has about 7,000 staff. They sit 5 days in a week. And in total, you have about 500 judicial officers. That includes the judges from the Court of Appeal, the Supreme Court, and all through up to the magistrates. You're just about at about 550 people. So here is an institution. And then mark you, their processes are manual. That is why a case can stay for years, because the magistrate, the judge, has got to do it manually.
In writing.
In writing. So when will we introduce technology in the judiciary? When will we allocate enough resources to allow them to have technology that can be used to transcribe the evidence? You can have digital approaches so that we can help them ease up this pressure and be able to dispense with justice. So these are some of the issues that I talk about when I say, are we adequately resourcing?
You said that the president cannot be a whistleblower in his own government, and the president has to confront the bull by the horns. In your own words, those are what you said. Now, do we have a way that he can be able to handle this menace called corruption, if it's about...
I've just given you an example. If he calls somebody and he says, there are issues that I imagine from your docket.
Resign.
Exit. The Constitution allows him that. I mean, you see, if you remember Pontius Pilate. Pontius Pilate in the biblical times, when somebody was brought, he said, look, what is the guilt around this man? It's not for me. If you think he has committed a crime, take him to King Herod. Okay. So basically, Pontius Pilate was passing the buck.
Okay.
He could have either said, if he's innocent, then he's innocent, or if he's guilty, then he's... But he said, look, it's not for me now. Let it go to King Herod.
Let's talk about referendum. When you went into the last election, as the stand of ANC Party was very clear, and you say that there was a need to review the Constitution. So far, right now, has the stand changed? Have you seen that they still need to review the Constitution the same way you're talking? Because I remember you said we do not push for a referendum with the view of sharing our seats.
You see, that's a very important question. And a referendum is a very serious undertaking and very serious exercise for any nation. All right? And remember, in the UK, the referendum has gone with 2 prime ministers. It knocked out Cameron. Theresa May has been knocked out. The impact and the effects of that referendum, and it's possible the after effects might go with another Prime Minister of the UK.
So it's expected still in the future.
These things are issues that must be looked at very critically. But in the context of Kenya, by the way, even in Kenya, after the referendum on the new constitution, it also took away the position of Prime Minister in 2010.
I remember the DP is saying, we don't have this position, maybe we can be able to apply the CBC elsewhere.
So you see, referendums have got their own dynamics, and we need to internalize these things. But why I say that is that when we filed our coalition document under NASA, we did admit that there are some aspects of our constitution that may need reflection and review. And we wanted this to be a broad participatory process. Had we taken power, it would be a broad participatory process. Now, I'm trying to safeguard, because the impression or the way the debate around the referendum is being packaged, it's being packaged as if it has nothing else to do but to deal with just the governance structure. Basically, it's being restructured to say that positions shall be created. If you package it that way, then
we are losing focus on what's important.
Then we are becoming selfish as leaders. We are becoming selfish. We are making people think that a referendum is just about our positions. Musalia sharing this with Ram, and Ram sharing this with the other. You know, who gets the hind leg of the cow, who gets the front leg, who gets the tail, who gets the ribs. We can't package a referendum in that manner.
So
we need
a referendum, but we need to find out how we package it.
We need to collectively dialogue as a nation, broad participation, isolate the issues, then create the referendum questions. And I can tell you, if we don't present issues that also deal with accountability properly in whatever we are presenting, if we don't present issues that the Mwananchi will see is also addressing government greed or excesses, that is also addressing the high cost of living and so forth, and mismanagement, then we will have lost the ground. And there's a possibility, if you go to the ground that way, the Kenyan voter might be angry and reject that referendum.
But we don't even have a referendum question.
That's the question. So before you paint somebody red, the reds or the blues, what is the question? Let us dialogue as Kenyans, and let it not be seen to be the preserve of the political elite.
In your own view, are Kenyans interested in this push for referendum?
If they believe that there are issues that can be flagged that will affect them and benefit them, then they would be interested. But I can tell you, I was in Taita Taveta a few days ago, about a month ago, and I had an opportunity to interact with a cross-section of opinion leaders from Taita. And they said, one of our challenges in Taita is that Tsavo National Park has taken away 62% of their landmass. And they argue that the national government draws a lot of billions from the revenue there. But they are suffering from the wildlife-human conflict. They are not getting any compensation. They have no water. And they are saying, if you are going to come and bring a referendum that is not helping us address these kind of concerns,
then why do we need a referendum?
Then why do we need a referendum? Now, multiply that with the other concerns in other parts of the country. So, as leaders, let us focus on what is right. If for instance, it's a question of accountability that we want to focus on, are we going to make sure that ministers become accountable to Parliament? Because now, with the structure that we took, there are other challenges. So instead of just saying, let us talk about the positions, what are we addressing in terms of enhancing accountability to the Kenyan people and respect to the Kenyan people?
Do you support the Building Bridges initiative? I remember you talked about that. It's it has. You said it has low turnout.
I have my reservations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I've had my reservations because genuine concerns have been raised not just by me but by other people. That to what extent is the Building Bridges being seen beyond two individuals?
Mm-hmm.
Because the terms of reference were drawn by two individuals, President Uhuru and Honorable Raila Odinga. And then they selected the panel.
It affected NASA.
There it is. They just selected, and there it is. So it is there. So there are genuine concerns, and let's not wish them away.
Mm-hmm.
That because even when we conceptualizing within the NASA document, we are conceptualizing a broad-based consultative process, almost formatted on the Bombers of Kenya rounds during the debate for the Constitution. But the BBI is going around collecting views, and then they'll deliver a report.
Some are saying that it's a hoax. At some point, it's not.
I don't want to call it a hoax. I'm just saying that
Mm-hmm.
The process leading up to the BBI
Mm-hmm.
has got some credibility gaps, which the authors of the process need to address so that Kenyans can have a bigger buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is what is important.
Now, this Building Bridges initiative, it affected NASA.
In what way?
Right now, seemingly, the handshake affected NASA. NASA is not being felt in terms of the alliances that you had formed. Here we are having you, Honorable Moses, the new Wetangula, Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka. Is NASA still something that Kenyans should believe in that exists?
Legally, as NASA, we have disappointed our supporters. Okay, it's a legal entity, it exists, but the broad agenda which millions of people voted for under the banner of NASA, I can tell you there are some broken hearts out there.
Mm-hmm.
NASA still remains as a legal entity, because to break NASA, 3 political entities must go. Parties must exit formally. Now, out of the founding parties,
Mm-hmm.
none has exited. So there's some faith. There was some people still hold the ideals close to their chest. I mean, to their heart. They like what NASA stood for.
There's the people.
Okay.
What about the core principles
But
of NASA?
now the reality is that as much as it's still there legally,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of operations and the functioning, we are seeing less of NASA as the coalition. We are seeing more activity of individual political parties.
Let's head over to social media. Jane Ombui is on the other side. Jane, what are people saying online?
That we are on still remains hashtag Good Morning Kenya. Let me just go straight to it. We have Karl Marx, who's actually saying, Musalia is a safe pair of hands, a skilled negotiator, conversant with international diplomacy and economic matter, untainted by corruption and competent administrator, all qualities lacking in his competitors here in the political scene in Kenya. Definitely in support there of Mheshimiwa. We have Reddy, who is actually just going, Mheshimiwa sentiments in terms of changing the narrative about the people in the western side of Kenya. But there are many questions, like maybe you think you could become the president of Kenya, republic, without a
The reality is that coalitions will become more important in Kenya's politics going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I would strongly advocate that Kenyans should take a little more time to refine the legal framework around coalitions. going forward. And we have an opportunity through our legislators to reflect on these issues and make coalition building much better and more legally structured. I think that the legal environment can be improved. Once in a while, it is possible that you can have a very strong party that can emerge.
But you know, before every election, you normally have coalitions.
But there are always coalitions. So going forward, I would say that let us build the political parties. And a strong coalition, or a coalition, will always be as good and as strong as the parties that constitute that coalition.
Another question from still Effie, who's asking, do you believe in the Big Four agenda that the president launched, and do you think it will be of benefit to the Kenyans?
President's agenda, he has a right to determine his agenda. When I get there, I will have my agenda. So these are two different things. But what is important is for us not to chew, not to bite more than we can chew. That is the way I would put it. Because looking at the time frame that is left of his leadership, in 3 years, and the agenda that he has put on the table, he has to reflect and maybe zero in on one or two. But I would throw in and say that the biggest legacy he can leave us is to strengthen the war against corruption and have this as his lasting legacy. Because if we don't tame it during this time, it will become extremely hard for anybody going into the future. The other thing he should do is that the issue of the public debt, I've been saying this, this may not even be intentional, but the reality is that there's going to be a legacy of massive debt, massive commercial debt to the Kenyan people. Debt is not the problem in itself, but what is the cost of that debt? And right now, what is scaring Kenyans is the commercial debt that has been rapidly accumulated.
You know, so far Kenya owes foreign debt to more than 20 countries and institutions through, like China.
Yeah. You know the significant aspect is that we have always borrowed since independence, all right? Whether it is from the World Bank, whether it is from Japan and so forth. And we have had significant traditional lenders. For a long time, for instance, Japan was our largest single lender, if you go bilaterally. And if you go multilaterally, then you would go to the World Bank and so forth. But of special significance should be China, which was virtually zero as a creditor of Kenya, has shot to become the largest single creditor in terms of loans. So from zero, or from very minuscule amounts, China is now the biggest loan in our debt portfolio. That is what should raise the eyebrows of the Kenyan people. And then the question is, what is the profile of that debt? How much of it is commercial? How much of it is concessionary? Concessionary means cheap loans, which can have an interest rate of 2% and a repayment period of 30 years. But if you are engaging rates at 7% or 8%, and the repayment period is less than 15 years, then you have to ask yourself, where are we going?
All right. A quick comment here from Rachel, who's saying, Musalia Mudavadi is such a wise man, full of knowledge. Young leaders should emulate his political life. I'm loving the show. Thank you so much for bringing such a guest. Say hi to Mheshimiwa. So, pokea salamu Mheshimiwa from Rachel. She's in Thika.
Thank
All right.
you so much.
And Nelly goes on to ask, do you think the 2 months is a lot of time for the exchange of the 1,000 note and when it comes to the fight against corruption?
It's not too much. You see, in financial markets, you must also not cause disruption. When you're dealing with an economy, you don't want to cause massive disruption. That is why the governor gives adequate lead time to prepare, because the money is being introduced systematically into circulation. And remember, central bank has got a footprint in Nairobi, and then I think it's Kisumu, Mombasa, Eldoret, and I think they were doing something in Kisii the other day at some collection point. So basically, you must look at where central bank is. So central bank can only distribute this through the financial system, the banking system. So it has to prepare. There has to be an orderly transition. And that is why they give I'm sure the experts in the financial world have assessed and said that within this period, we should have an orderly transition. But you cannot just wake up the way India did and said, from today, this currency is...
And within a day, it's out.
Yeah, you can't do that.
All right.
You have to have some orderly process.
Yes, due process. All right, Wycliffe is asking, with the rate of corruption rather is very high in Kenya. Do you think the EACC and the DC are doing the best, because we see people being released on free bonds and nothing is being done to them ultimately?
I think on this one I said that they could do better, and they need to be given sufficient resources and capacity to be able to deal with their mandate. I keep repeating that it's important. And we must also remember that the issue of bail and bond is a constitutional obligation. You cannot have a system where it's the rule of the jungle. But at the end of the day, the strength of EACC and the strength of the prosecution will be on the evidence adduced. All cases collapse or fall on the face of the collapse or succeed on the face of the evidence that is laid before the judiciary. So the investigators must do a thorough job.
All right, and just one last one from Terence Matwele. Hon Musalia Mudavadi, what is your take on the Tanga Tanga and Kileweke groups? Do you think they are causing unnecessary political tension in the country? And is it too early for 2022 politics, given that we are in 2019?
I said before that those, I don't know what they really stand for, because those are two factions of the same party. It's a conflict inside Jubilee.
You said they don't have ideologies.
Yeah, it's not about the rest of the country. That is a conflict inside Jubilee.
Jade?
All right, let me refresh my feed and see if we have more feedback. Timo Taje just saying he's absolutely loving the discussion. Kudos for you for bringing Mheshimiwa to give us such insightful information when it comes to the country's leadership. But I believe that is that for now. But thank you so much for being part of Good Morning Kenya. The hashtag still remains hashtag Good Morning Kenya. Back to you, Ram.
Thank you very much, Jane. Make sure that you tag us at Ram Aguko, at Jane Ombuyi, and officially at KBC Channel 1. Also at Musalia Mudavadi. That's your Twitter handle, right?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Now, remember, tomorrow, the CS for Treasury, Henry Rotich, will read the 2019-2020 budget. And I would like just to, as we wrap things up, is it possible to reduce recurrent expenditure? You have been a Minister of Finance before there.
It is possible to reduce recurrent expenditure. It's not easy, but it is possible.
Not easy, but possible.
Yes.
And what about balancing the budget gradually, because without the need to borrow? Remember, Parliament representatives are now increasing their allowances and salaries.
You know the whole issue is when you budget, try and live within your means. Okay. We don't know what Rotich will present. But if it continues to be forecast on just massive expenditure everywhere, then we are headed for real trouble. Because by now, I think he should start addressing, and we'll be looking, how does he intend to address the issue of the massive public debt that is accumulating, and which has also been acknowledged by the Central Bank of Kenya. Njoroge said that we have reached the ceiling when it comes to public borrowing. And that is the banker of last resort. That is the banker of Kenya, the Kenya government, telling them that be careful.
You had said that we are handling these issues to do with money and debt as if it's boring, as if it's a function of a secret society.
Precisely, because it's shrouded under too much secrecy. And this is why I've been advocating, and I put it lightly in humorous terms when I said the word serikali and how it emerged. It emerged from sirikali, and then it became serikali. But when you look at it from the point I was trying to make is that countries like Ireland, and I keep on giving this example, through their legislative process, were able to establish an independent debt management authority, which then is focused, equipped to analyze all public debt and to know whether there is value for money, and to know whether the institution that is borrowing will have the capacity to repay and so forth, and to be able to analyze in detail and offer genuine advice so that it can caution and say, don't take this loan. That is the institution we need. Right now, the structure about debt management in our current arrangement is so weak, and it is overrun by the heads of treasury.
Yet we are borrowing. The World Bank has approved around 75 billion shillings.
It has approved, okay, but it has not disbursed. You know, you approve, but disbursing is a separate thing, because there are conditions attached to that approval. So we are yet to see what those conditions will be in detail, but I'm sure the treasury has them.
In terms of probability,
in terms of what the conditions are for disbursement of the 75 billion from the World Bank, Treasury has the conditions, and I think Treasury needs to make those conditions public to the Kenyan people.
You know,
but why I was coming back to this other authority, you know, like the commercial loans that have been taken around, say the railway and so forth, we are beginning to see, doses being released in the media that there was this side contract, there was that side contract, there was this clause, all these which have financial implications, but they are not in the public domain. That is why I was saying, don't handle this like a secret society. So we need to have an institution so that we are transparent around the debt issues, and they are laid out into the public in a manner that can be understood and scrutinized. And at the same time, we can be cautioned on time that do not engage in that arrangement.
75% of Kenyans, about 75%, they derive most of their livelihoods from the agricultural sector, and this accounts for around 18% of the GDP. Now, budget allocation to agriculture has been stagnant, and at some point it declines, depending on how it has been for the past 5 years, as well as negative credit growth from the commercial banks to the sector of agriculture. How are we able to boost this? Because here we are having 75% of Kenyans.
It's a long story here, because we'll be going into various sectoral issues. But for instance, if we want to look at agriculture thoroughly, we may need to see whether the policies that we have been putting in place are supportive or they're crippling the people who are involved in agricultural activities. We need to look at some of these things. If I give an example of what has hit the sugar industry, what hit the coffee industry, have we taken any serious steps?
And all these industries have CSS.
To look into that. And these are the issues that the various sectoral cabinet CSS must put on the table for us to evaluate and see whether it is making sense or not. If you look at credit to agriculture and to other small enterprises, everybody knows that the financial markets are suffering from the interest capping. And that is why all the money is going back to the government. People are putting more money in bonds and treasury bills. And banks are, and they're making their profit at no cost. All you have to do is you get your deposits and take it to the central bank and get a bond, treasury bond.
All right.
They're not lending as they should be. The credit growth out there is not sufficient.
Thank you very much, Hon Musalia Mudavadi, for joining me this morning.
Thank you.
I appreciate it so much.
Asante sana.
That is ANC Party Leader, Hon Musalia Mudavadi. He says, Ulisema, you are holding your cards close to your chest.
Yes.
I wish you the best in 2022. And
Asante sana.
even as you look into developing the country.
That's right.
Keep the tweets coming in. The hashtag is Good Morning Kenya on Twitter, at KBC Television, at Jane Wambui, and at Ram Aguko. Make sure that you use the hashtag Good Morning Kenya. Keep the tweets coming in. Keep your comments coming in. We have come to the end of the show. Now, 17 minutes past 9 a.m. We would like to appreciate you for keeping it, Good Morning Kenya from 6 to 10. Make sure that you tune in again tomorrow for yet another set of discussions tomorrow morning from 6 to 10 with the one and only Regina Manyara Gitao, Jane Ombui Kibera, and myself, Ram Aguko. May God bless you. Have a blessed day. May God bless the work of your hands. But keep it KBC Channel 1.
Thank you.